Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Prime Sports World. Thank you very much if you happened to join us yesterday for any of our draft day coverage. We had a lot of fun covering every pick of the except for the first two, because I thought the draft started at 7:30. I guess it may have started at like 7:20. So that's my fault. I guess we missed the first two picks of this year's draft. But hopefully you guys enjoyed our coverage. We put a lot of work into it, and thank you very much for joining us here. So as we break down draft day one, talk some winners and losers, some most surprising picks, along with talk about a little bit about most surprising picks. Also talk about players that are still available that have some immense upside in the second day of the NFL draft, which kicks off today at 7 o'clock. I believe that's Eastern time. That's 6 o'clock Central time if you're in Chicago, like I am. Of course, I'm your host, David On Point. I'm going to be running solo through here, so I'm just going to give you guys my winners, my losers, my most surprising pick, my favorite pick, my least favorite pick, and then, players available. Thank you very much for joining us. If you're looking for consistent content on Facebook, YouTube, and on the Twitter at PSW_David, Prime Sports World, pretty good place to hang out. We go live 5 or 6 times a week, bringing the most up-to-date content that we can. So continue checking us out because we do appreciate the content and the follows. It really means a lot to us here at Prime Sports World. I also want to thank our friends over there at Rouge Bear for sponsoring us here at Prime Sports World. Let your presence be felt. Drop the link to their website and our Facebook page, along with the NFL Supreme Facebook page as well. Go check out that spring collection that they've been featuring on their website. It's pretty good stuff right there. But yeah, let's get into it. First of all, let's talk about winners, losers, best pick, worst pick, and then the most surprising pick, and then the best available player, as round one of the NFL draft is in the books. And boy, it was a doozy. Tons and tons of trades, way more trades than I could have ever anticipated. I actually thought that like all of the trade stuff was done. But what was I super wrong in the way the NFL draft worked out, where there was basically a trade, 4 trades back to back, all trading for wide receivers. It was a pretty wild night when it comes to the NFL draft, especially in the first round. One of the wildest first rounds I can ever remember, as somebody who's been following the draft for at least the last decade or so, pretty intensely. So let's talk about my round one winners. My first round winners is both New York teams. Let's start first with the Jets. I love their picks in this draft. Addresses all address major needs, and it needs or came in at a value when they made the pick. Sauce Gardner, arguably the best corner in this draft. 0 touchdowns allowed his entire career in college at Cincinnati. Then they got Garrett Wilson. Jets heavily involved in the Tyreek Hill sweepstakes, also involved in the Deebo Samuel sweepstakes. For them to be able to get Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner in the top 10 is pretty good value, in my opinion. Also, Garrett Wilson wasn't even the first wide receiver taken, and he's probably the most NFL-ready wide receiver out of the guys that were taken yesterday. And then they got Jermaine Johnson the second. They had to trade back into the first round to do it, but Jermaine Johnson the second, at one point was flirting with being a top 10 pick. The fact that he falls into the 20s, the Jets trade up to get him. It's a good value pick, and he's a good football player. He's freakishly athletic. You should be able to get after the quarterback right away. And the Jets, with this first round, address corner, edge rusher, wide receiver, all positions of need for the New York Jets. Great job great job by their front office by building a good roster for Robert Saleh to work with going forward. And then we got the Giants, big winner for the Giants, Kristen Simpson, who's in Las Vegas, Nevada right now, enjoying the NFL draft. It has to love what the Giants did with their first 2 picks. They got 2 guys that were in 1-point conversation being the first overall pick, and they were able to get them at 5 and 7 respectively, with Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal. It's just great drafting. Like Kayvon Thibodeau, I think the hate's gone way too far on him. He's a really good football player, and he's going to be a good football player for a long time for the Giants. And then Evan Neal, I mean, if you wanted to keep Andrew Thomas at left tackle, that's fine. Evan Neal can play right tackle. He did his junior season at Alabama when they had Alex Leatherwood at left tackle. He's basically played everywhere on the offensive line, so he gives you scheme versatility where you can kind of move him around as your Swiss Army knife offensive lineman. He hasn't played center, so you can't really play him at center, but you can play him anywhere else. But maybe right tackle next season. And if Andrew Thomas continues to struggle, you can put Evan Neal at the left tackle position. I just love what both New York teams did during this draft. Ravens. Continually, every single season, we kind of talk about how the Ravens killed the draft process. And this is another season where the Ravens killed the draft process. They got Kyle Hamilton at a steal where they got him. He was the number one player on my big board. He was also the number one player on Chat Sports big board. If you guys check out Chat Sports, they went live for the entire NFL draft, first round of the NFL draft as well. Pretty entertaining content over there at Chat Sports if you want to go check them out as well. But yeah, Kyle Hamilton, to get them where they got him is a steal. He's a really good football player, and he's probably the safest player in this draft. Like, I have very little concerns about Kyle Hamilton being a good football player. Like, I think the level. I think the question is how good do I think he's going to be. I think he's got Derwin James potential. He's 6'4". He's a big corner, big safety. One of the bigger safeties that's been drafted in a long time. So Kyle Hamilton's going to be a stud. And then they got Tyler Linderbaum. I mean, he's arguably a top 8, 9 prospect in this draft. And for him to fall all the way to, I think it was like 25 or 27 to get him. He's going to be a Pro Bowl player for 10 years for the Baltimore Ravens, and he addresses the need. They need to help an offensive lineman. Tyler Linderbaum brings in that immediately. And then one of my big winners is AJ Brown. Imagine waking up, you go out on a Thursday. All of a sudden now you're making $100 million over the next 4 seasons. I think 56 of that $1 million is that guaranteed. And I love this. I love this trade for the Philadelphia Eagles. You could take a wide receiver that you hope turns into AJ Brown, or you can get AJ Brown. So, the Philadelphia Eagles, I love it. And for one first round pick to get AJ Brown, looking at what had to be given up, one first and a third. Sorry, I apologize. But what we had to give up to get Devontae Adams, and what people gave up to get Tyreek Hill. This is immense value for AJ Brown. And congratulations to AJ Brown on that very nice new contract, because he's very much deserving of a new deal. If I'm the Titans, I don't understand why you wouldn't just pay him. My other winners are first one wide receivers. It seemed like everyone and their mother was trading up to get a wide receiver. As soon as Drake London was taken by the Falcons, and then Garrett Wilson went 2 picks later to the New York Jets, you just saw all of these teams trade up to try to get a wide receiver. The Saints traded up to get a wide receiver. The Detroit Lions traded up to get a wide receiver, and then people thought the Philadelphia Eagles traded up to get a wide receiver like the next pick after that. So yeah, it was just a wild first round, and for first round wide receivers, kind of saw the value of pass catchers in the National Football League now, where teams are like, it wouldn't a few years ago wouldn't have made any sense at all to trade up to get a wide receiver, and now we've seen it done, back-to-back picks, back-to-back picks. People traded up to get a wide receiver. So that's good for first round wide receivers. They continue to get paid. I mean, you look at the offseason and how much money for wide receivers made this offseason in a record-setting year for wide receivers. I mean, Christian Kirk was at one point like the 5th highest paid wide receiver in the National Football League, because wide receivers were getting paid. And then my final winner, before I move on into my draft losers, is the Kansas City Chiefs. Addressed 2 major needs in the first round. They got Trent McDuffie, the corner out of Washington, and then they got George Karloftis, the edge rusher out of Purdue. I know they had to trade up and give up some draft capital to get Trent McDuffie, but if that's the guy you want, you have to go get him, because he probably wasn't going to make it to 29 for you to be able to take him at 29. So you had to trade up. You had to get him where you got him. And Trent McDuffie, yeah, he should be. I mean, you lose Ward to free agency to San Francisco. You have a major void there at the cornerback position. Trent McDuffie is a good football player. His combine aside, you watch tape of Trent McDuffie, he can do it all. He's a really good corner, and he's not afraid to get a little bit into the physical too as well. And George Karloftis, I mean, is one of those guys that he's just a steady, he's just super productive. Like, you look at him at his body work while he was at Purdue, he was just a productive edge rusher every single year he was there. He's only really been playing football for five or 6 years. So he came over from Athens, Georgia. They call him the Greek freak of college football, because he's just a mammoth human being, and he gives you a versatile edge. You can put on the other side of Frank Clark. He gives you an edge. You can play with Chris Jones. He's a good football player, and it's a really good understanding of the draft board. Let's talk about losers on the other side. Not everything can be sunshine and rainbows. So whenever there's winners of the NFL draft, there's got to be some losers. And my first loser is the Commanders. I know there was a run of wide receivers, but that doesn't mean you have to reach to get one just because it's sort of a need for your team. Johan Dodson is a straight up reach where they took him. He had barely a first round grade for me at my big board. I just don't understand when you have other needs on this team. Like, you didn't necessarily need to reach for a wide receiver. I mean, they took him at 16. I mean, they could have taken Zion Johnson here. I'm not even sure he's a better player than Traylon Burks, who was still on the board. They needed an offensive lineman. They could have gotten Trevor Penning. I mean, there are other ways. Trent McDuffie was still on the board. They need cornerback help. I straight up just don't understand. I know there was a run on wide receivers, but just because that happens does not mean you need to all of a sudden throw all the chips in the middle and just try to get one just to get one. It makes zero sense whatsoever. You could have addressed this later. Um, and then from there, I got the Green Bay Packers as another loser on this board. Quay Walker is just a head-scratching pick altogether. It's not an area of need. You have Devontae Campbell there, who's an all-pro linebacker. You don't need another off-ball interior linebacker, and you didn't even take the best off-ball interior linebacker out of the school that he went to. Like, Jacoby Dean is a better football player. He just is. And the Green Bay Packers went into this draft with two major needs: offensive lineman and wide receiver. They addressed none of them during this draft. It makes literally no sense whatsoever. I don't understand what Green Bay's doing. And if you want to try to keep Aaron Rodgers happy, this is not the way. It's just not. And then one of my other minor losers is the Arizona Cardinals. I don't really understand how you justify that Hollywood Brown is worth a first-round pick. He's been an okay wide receiver in the National Football League, but a first-round pick worthy, I'm not so sure. Like, I just don't understand. I don't think that's a good trade at all for Arizona. Like, and I know they stole stole DeAndre Hopkins, but like, giving away a first-round pick for Hollywood Brown just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And then the Patriots, second to last year losers in my opinion. Patriots taking Cole Strange, where they took him. It just makes he's the 77th overall prospect by ESPN. And if this is the guy, if this is the guy you really wanted, you have to be okay with missing, right? So like, if you don't end up with the guy you want, and I wouldn't just have reached like this guy. This guy's not a first round pick. Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I know they needed a guard because they traded away Shaq Mason for some reason, but to reach on a player just because it's a position of need, as opposed to taking the best player on your board. Jacoby Dean would have made way more sense here. You need a linebacker. You need like, this defense got shredded up by the Buffalo Bills. They did not score until the final kneel down of the final possession of the game. This is not a pick you needed to make. You could have made this pick later. And sometimes you have to be willing to miss out on your guy. You just have to be. You can't make a reach on a player like 50 slots higher than his overall rating when it comes to a prospect. I don't like what the Patriots did. Doesn't make any sense. I know they picked up extra draft capital by trading back with Kansas City, so maybe they can recover some of this value in later picks, but it just doesn't make any sense. When we were doing the draft live, like, I pulled like 50 pictures of different prospects, and so I could build graphics for every single player and every single pick. I didn't have this guy. Like, it was the only guy in the first round I didn't have. So it was real head scratching. I just don't understand it at all. Cowboys. Tyler Smith might turn out to be a really good player. But they're going to need him to step in and play immediately, and he just isn't ready for the big time. He struggled mightily with penalties at Tulsa. I think there could have been other ways that Cowboys could have gone. They needed a linebacker. Jacoby Dean was still on the board at this point. You need another edge rusher because you lost Randy Gregory. They chose not to do that either. This Tyler Smith is just a reach. It just is. He could potentially be a good football player, but there are too many question marks about his technique and his mechanics to make any sense for him to go this early in this year's draft. It just doesn't make any sense. And those are my losers. Sorry, Commanders, Green Bay, Patriots, Cowboys, and then recapping my winners again real quick. Jets, Giants, Ravens, A.J. Brown, first round wide receivers, and then Kansas City Chiefs as my winners in this year's NFL draft. Let me know down in the comments section who you thought were the big winners of this year's draft and the losers, because not everybody can be a winner. And not everybody gets a participation trophy here at Prime Sports World. If you didn't have a good draft, we're going to let you know about it. And then from there, just some minor categories. So the best pick in this year's draft so far. Has to be a two-way tie, and they're both the picks by the Baltimore Ravens. To get Kyle Hamilton at 14, and then to partner that up with getting Tyler Linderbaum at 25. Those are the best picks in this year's draft. Um, they're both a steal where they got them. They should be Pro Bowl level players for 10 years for the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, Kyle Hamilton fills an area of need. I mean, they just lost Sean Elliott to free agency. Tyler Linderbaum can play all over the offensive line, but he's going to be a Pro Bowl level center for a long, long time, and he's the best player at his position by far for a long time. And like I think the hate on Tyler Linderbaum because people are concerned about him being slightly undersized. When you watch Tyler Linderbaum play, he doesn't play undersized. To the worst pick, Cole Strange. I mean, I hate to be the guy that kind of bashes this, but it just makes zero sense on any level whatsoever. Like, the guy is the 77th rated prospect on ESPN's big board. I had him somewhere in the 70s as well on my own big board. Like, you could have taken somebody else and still gotten him later. Like, it doesn't make any sense to reach this far for a player just because it's a position of need on your roster. This team has, I don't know if the Patriots know this or not, but they have other positions of need. Like, offensive guard is not their only position of need. Like, they had other stuff they should have addressed. And if they were that concerned about their offensive guard position, don't trade away Shaq Mason for no reason. Just keep him. Nicole, it's just not a great pick. It's just not. It's just no other way to talk about it. It's not a good pick. It's not a good decision. Bill Belichick has earned a little bit of this level of doubt, and this is for sure a Bill Belichick pick. But it doesn't pass the eye test whatsoever. I don't like it at all. Most shocking pick. That goes to Quay Walker, going to the Green Bay Packers at, hold on one second, at 22. Quay Walker, this pick came from the Las Vegas Raiders as part of the Devontae Adams trade. Quay Walker, not a position of need for Green Bay. As I mentioned when I talked to them being a loser, they have an all-pro linebacker already on the roster that they spent money on to keep. And he wasn't even the best linebacker at the college he went to when they made the pick. Like, the Kobe Dean is still on the board, and new Kobe Dean is a better linebacker than Quay Walker. I understand that Quay Walker had a really good combine, but the Kobe Dean was the leader of that defense. He brings intangibles that you can't put in a combine. Quay Walker makes no sense. I mean, they needed wide receiver help in the worst way in Green Bay. I mean, they have arguably the worst wide receiving core in the National Football League right now. I mean, outside of Sammy Watkins and Alan Lazar. I mean, who else in that when it comes to that wide receiving core instills with any kind of worry or concern? It's not a lot. They have a lot of question marks when it comes to wide receiver. Even Sammy Watkins, who's probably way past his prime at this point, it wasn't even productive at all in Baltimore last season. Has some major question marks. And Alan Lazard has been hit or miss his entire career, and you're always going to think he's going to make a major step. I do understand that there's some wide receivers still on the board here when it comes to best available. They could eventually get somebody in the second round, but offensive lineman, wide receiver was a big need for the Green Bay Packers, and they chose to address none of them. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then finally, my best available players, my top five best available players for the remainder of this draft. I got Kobe Dean. I'm reliably pretty shocked that Kobe Dean didn't go in the first round here. He's a really good football player, and he's a good leader, and he brings a lot of intangibles that you can't really teach. And then I got Andrew Booth Jr. He's a long, lengthy quarter, 6 foot, 194. He's the best, as mean as he talked about yesterday. He may be the best ball hawking corner in this draft. So yeah, he's going to be a steal kind of in the second round. And Malik Willis, I know, it's got to be disappointing for him. He kind of thought he was going to go in the first round, 6'1", 219. But somebody's probably going to get a steal from him in the second round, and hopefully he goes to a place where he can sit for a little while, and there isn't the pressure to bring him in as a starting quarterback immediately, because he needs a couple years because he's not at all ready for the National Football League. And then the last two, David Ojabo. It's unfortunate, he had the Achilles tear during his pro day. We were all hoping that he was going to be able to be a first round pick still because he deserved it. You go through college and you become a good prospect, and then you go to have a pro day where scouts are going to watch you perform, and then you tear your Achilles during that pro day. That's rough, man. It's real rough. But I do hope that somebody gives him a chance because he's got really good pass rushing skills. He's got excellent closing speed. I imagine that Achilles tear has scared a lot of teams off. But David Ojabo is still a good football player at 6'4", 250 pounds. And then finally, I got Kyler Gordon, the other corner out of Washington. He's got easy mover, quick feet, 6', 194. Uh, you know, he's a good football player, and his combine probably hurt him a little bit when it came to his draft stock. But as I talk about this all the time, like, we don't play football in in t-shirt and shorts. We play football in pads, and when you watch Kyler Gordon's tape, you can tell he's a pretty good football player. But yeah, let me know what you think. What do you think? So best pick, worst pick, most surprising pick, and who do you think are the best 5 prospects still available in this year's draft? Um, I thank you very much for checking me out. I'm David Huffman here at Prime Sports World. I'm the executive producer here at Prime Sports World. I build all of the graphics for these shows. So let me know what you think about even the graphics elements of this stuff. So I put a lot of time into it. I put a lot of effort into it. So please let us know what you think of what we're doing over here at Prime Sports World. I've been David Huffman, and we bring the heat, and we'll be back here tomorrow changing gears ever so slightly. We're going to be previewing those round 2 matchups in the NBA playoffs, because every team now knows who they're going to be playing when it comes to the round 2, as the Utah Jazz, Pelicans, and the Raptors were all eliminated last night in action on the court. So continue checking us out at Prime Sports World. Check us out at Facebook at Prime Sports World on Facebook. We're on YouTube at Prime Sports World, and then on Twitter we are PSW_David. So yeah, continue checking us out here at Prime Sports World, because we're going to be continuing to great content, and we bring the heat to you guys every single day. I've been David. You guys all have a good night and be safe out there. Peace out.